One of my favorite things lately has been interacting with all of the other like-minded small business owners inside of my free online community. If you want access to free resources, tools, trainings, tons of great sales advice, and just general encouragement for your business journey, then click the link in the show notes and join myself and other small business owners inside the She Sells Differently Facebook group today.
You can't have a high-performing team unless you're ready to be a high-performing leader. And so as much as we want to elevate the people in our organizations, we want them to think about themselves as being a leader of their own work. We have to be ready to impact others as a leader in order for it all to work together, right? It just doesn't work if you think it's just the team that has to do the heavy lifting.
Hi, friends. Welcome to She Sells Differently, the show for aspiring women entrepreneurs looking to overcome the fear of selling and grow thriving businesses from a place of authenticity and confidence. I'm Andy Hart, and it wasn't all that long ago that I was a sales executive for a Fortune 500 company. But I knew in my heart that I was called to use my gifts for something more, something different. That's exactly why I created the She Sells Differently podcast. Each episode is going to deliver you business strategies, tools, and mindset shifts to help set you and your brand apart from our culture's expectations. It's time to elevate your sales and build a profitable, sustainable business you're proud of. One built on integrity, grace, and humility. It's time to learn how to sell differently. Welcome to the She Sells Differently podcast. I love when I have experts and guests on my show that bring just such immense value to my listeners. And so today is no different because we have Lindsay White on the show. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi, glad to be here.
Yes, Lindsay is an executive coach and people operations expert. And she's also a podcast host, which I was on her podcast a few weeks ago. I think when this airs, it will be a few weeks now. And so make sure and check that out. But I love what we are going to be talking about today because it's all about how people strategy can drive sustainable success for your business. And so many of you guys out there have asked questions about how to grow your business with the right people strategy. And so we are going to dive into that today. So
Love it.
Yes. And Lindsay, I'm going to let you introduce yourself just a little bit. And as you're introducing yourself, tell a little bit about how you got into entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah, I can totally do that. I am an accidental entrepreneur. I have no business running a business. I've spent almost 20 years in human resources and strategic talent management. And so I've worked in large matrixed organizations as a strategic partner for senior leaders and C-suite executives, helping them take their business plan, craft the right strategy to grow and attract and retain the right talent, and then, build the programs like performance management, compensation, learning opportunities, all of those different things that we think of, especially if you've come from a corporate background, you know what those look like. So I've done that. I would work with the executive team and then we would go and design those things as an HR group. And so now what I do is I take that same level of knowledge, experience, and design, and I do it on the scale that's appropriate for a small and growing business. So my clientele usually has somewhere between 5 and 50 employees and recognizes that they need the right people doing the right things in order to grow their business. Like they really see how important it is. And also, in my methodology, it's about leadership. So we got to have the right leaders. We got to be the right leader. We got to have the right people strategy. And of course, we want to have a great culture because that's what attracts and retains talent. So that's what I do. In the process of doing that in the corporate world, I recognized a lot of my time was spent coaching leaders.
What fascinates me about leadership is that it is one of those topics that no matter where you are in the corporate structure, no matter where you are as a small business owner, you are a leader
Mhm.
and you never stop growing and you never stop learning about leadership.
True.
It's just an ever evolving ladder of learning, right? And so I love that you focus on that because it's such an integral part of people strategy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. You can't have a high performing team unless you're ready to be a high performing leader. And so, as much as we want to elevate the people in our organizations, we want them to think about themselves as being a leader of their own work. We have to be ready to impact others as a leader in order for it all to work together, right? It just doesn't work if you think it's just the team that has to do the heavy lifting.
100%.
Yeah.
I often hear, or, you hear people say leadership is just a natural trait. How much do you feel of leadership is natural versus really learned and honed
Mm.
for leaders that you work with?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good question. Yes. So, first of all, I do think we all have leadership skills. And I think that looks different for different people. Just to be clear, leadership is not one set group of skills. It's not one way to learn. It's not one way to operate. So I
Hmm.
think we all come with some of that skill. Some of us who have played sports have been on a team or even done an individualized sport. Maybe they've been part of a cheer team. Maybe they've done dance, musical theater, right? Well, we have to operate in some kind of leadership capacity, in some kind of activity. Then we're using those leadership skills. And often we use them earlier because we start, like me, I started playing basketball when I was like 8 or 10 years old, right? And so then do those kinds of people, again, particularly women, seem like they have more leadership skill? Yes, just because they've been using it longer and they've been exposed to leadership in different ways. But I do think everybody has that capacity. It's just a matter of investing in yourself first, because leadership's an inside job, right?
Hmm.
Learning, but also implementing. You have to be willing to try. Leadership is experiential. You can't just read a bunch of books and go to a bunch of workshops and you're a better leader. That's not how it works. You got to do
Right.
it. You got to do it to know how you need to adjust all of that information to suit you.
And that means getting out of your comfort zone because let me tell you, if there's one thing I have
Yeah.
learned about leadership, it is getting out of your comfort zone and putting yourself out there. And I say this all the time too. I mean, I think this really goes along with people strategy, but you don't become a leader to be well liked all the time.
No.
And as a self described recovering people pleaser, that was one of the biggest hurdles that I
Yeah.
had to learn. Oh man, like you do not become a leader to be well liked all the time. And so that was a hard thing. How do you coach through that
Yeah.
from a leadership coach perspective, but also implementing that into an effective people strategy?
Yeah. So, first of all, I think it's really important, particularly as female leaders, that we differentiate between being nice and being kind, because that's what gets us caught in that people pleasing trap, is that we want to be nice. You can actually be very direct. You can be very clear. You can be very solid in your convictions and not be nice, but you can be kind.
Hmm.
And in fact, a lot of the work that I do with the women that I coach is really about finding that differentiated space. And we got to drop the good girl act, right? We got to drop the place where we need everybody to like us. Because in all reality, keeping everyone else happy is actually not the objective. So there really are some pieces that we have to pull apart. We have to examine very carefully. We have to recognize what it means to be nice versus what it means to be kind. I am deeply kind. I am also incredibly direct. I have
Hmm.
no problem engaging in a difficult conversation. If something is not working, I believe that it is the kindest thing I can do to get into why it's not working and be very clear about what's happening from my perspective, clarify expectations, ask great questions, find out what's happening for the other people in the conversation, create understanding. But that's not always nice. Sometimes it's crunchy and it's messy and it feels awkward, and that's okay, right? Because that's what gets us progress. That's what being a great leader is all about, is actually being okay with being vulnerable, being uncomfortable, but actually getting to the heart of the matter so you can actually solve the problem.
Amen. Amen. I
Yeah.
just want to let you keep going because I'm like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
And yes, all the time I'm like, you have to be direct, and you can't be the person that everyone likes all the time, but that sometimes the kindest
Yeah.
thing that you can do
Yeah.
is to have an honest conversation with someone.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's very hard. It's getting out of your comfort zone.
And
But
leadership is about doing the hard things. Just
yes.
to be clear, because I think a lot of people, especially in corporate, they want to get into leadership because it means that it's a new title and it's more money.
Hmm.
Leadership done well is really hard work. It is about leaning in to all of those spaces that you probably never wanted to go. Like you hoped those weren't things you ever had to do. But that's what being a great leader is really about. And I think often we only really think about some of the happy, shiny things, not sort of those messy, sticky pieces. And in fact, that's where a lot of the beauty in leadership lives, is getting into the messiness that is leading
Yeah.
and actually coming out the other side with a great solution or something that's transformative for the individuals and for the business.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also find that leadership is very sanctifying too, meaning like I have grown so much as an individual
Yep.
because of some of the people that I have had the great blessing and the fortune of leading. And one of the things that I have always, always desired for the people that I lead is that they give me direct feedback as
100%.
well. And it's a two-way street, right? That is a sanctifying process sometimes because it causes me to have very sometimes not easy to hear
Yeah.
feedback, but that's where the growth happens too, you know?
Yeah. Our teams have valuable data for us.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And if we aren't actively seeking the feedback, and when I say that, it's not just, well, I have an open door policy. I hear that from leaders a lot. I have an open door policy. Yeah, they're totally not coming to give you sign their paychecks. They're not stupid, right? So just saying you have an open door policy is not an invitation. You have to prove. You have to prove to them not only that you want it, but that you can receive it. Because if you only one time react to that feedback in a negative way, you'll never get it again. You have to be able to self manage. That's self leadership. Like leadership starts from the inside out. So you
Yes.
want to be able not only to invite it, but to actually receive it the way that's intended, even if they don't do a great job delivering it, even if it stings, it pinches a little bit because it's something that you're like, oh, yeah, I didn't perform well there. That was not a good look for me.
Yep.
You have to be able to take it, internalize it, really process it in a meaningful way, and then make change. There's nothing worse than saying to someone, here's some feedback, here's something that I think you could work on, and then they never do it. Why would I offer you any feedback again? So you have to
Yeah.
be ready to invite it and action it and internalize it.
So let's rewind just a little bit because what are some things as a small business owner, small business leader, how can some of my listeners create a culture that invites their employees to share feedback, create a safe space where their employees feel comfortable to come to them and offer feedback and create that culture of a feedback?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first and foremost, you have to have a space of trust. You have to create psychological safety. And before anybody listening starts to roll their eyes, because that's a term that gets tossed around a lot, psychological safety. What that means is that you have to create a space where people feel like they are seen, heard, respected, and ultimately like they belong. That's your culture. right? So if you don't have a culture where people feel like they belong and can show up as themselves, they're not going to give you great feedback. So that's where the work starts, right? It has to be grounded in a space of high trust. And when I say high, I mean really high. They have to believe that you have their best interest at heart. And they also need to believe that you are open and ready to listen to what they have to offer. And if they don't believe either one of those two things, you're not going to get great feedback. So those are the first two steps. And then actually having a great feedback model, a way that you commonly share feedback so that you can do it in a way that everybody can understand what it looks like. So, some common language. I like to use a feedback model that has three pieces and it's very simple. We talk about what went well. So, we share what were the successes? Where did things actually go really excellent? Then we talk about what was tricky or difficult. And that could be everything from the internet was cutting in and out all the way through to the client left in the middle of the meeting. Like it could be little tiny things or really big things, but it's just tricky. It's tricky that my lighting in here today isn't great for you know what I mean? Like it could be something very innocuous and the word tricky takes the sting out of it, right? It just allows us to
Yes.
examine what didn't go the way we wanted without a whole bunch of emotional attachment. No blame, no judgment. Then we need to talk about what do we need to do differently or what do we need to do next time. And if we use a model like that so that they give us feedback, we give them, like we're sharing using that model, man, that really organize these things in a way that people can receive it well, that we can action it beautifully, that we can actually dig in and examine some of these pieces to understand what really happened. Again, with no judgment, no emotion, no finger pointing. That's where feedback is super valuable in a culture to create that space of sharing and trust, perpetuate it, and make sure that everybody actually is on the same page.
Yes. Something you just said resonated with me. You said, take the emotion out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that is so hard for us, especially as I truly believe as women, it's harder. We're just innately emotional beings. And so that is hard to
Yep.
not react, with just emotion but just to really take that and be detached from that. It's so hard.
100%. Well, because we're so passionate about what we do,
Yes.
right? We put our blood, sweat, and tears and often our life savings into these darn businesses. How can we not be emotionally attached? So
Right.
maybe listening and thinking, Lindsay, how can I not be emotional about this stuff? This is great leadership, self-regulation. Even if you are really ticked off, you're really overwhelmed, you're really frustrated, or you're really sad, you have got to control that to be effective as a leader because it's not all about you. Leaders eat last, right? We've
Mhm.
all heard that phrase. So you got to regulate so that you can actually get into the feedback. You can understand what happened and you can understand what needs to be fixed. Getting all freaked out and huffy about it isn't solving the problem,
Yes.
right?
So this was a lesson from my corporate days, but this was just a few years ago. And I spent years in leadership. And so I will say this, that it is an ongoing process of learning and learning.
And unlearning sometimes.
Right. And so I
Yeah.
knew this good and well to not let things, trickle down and to not get emotional. But Lindsay, it was just months and months of ongoing. And so my group of managers that reported to me, we were in a room and they kept on and kept on and kept on. And I lost my cool.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my cool. There was like part of it that like they needed to like, I kind of needed to, lay down the law, but part of it, I lost my cool too much. And
Yeah.
so I remember after that, one of the managers that worked for me called me and I remember she gave me such direct feedback and that had to be so hard for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to her and I was like, thank you so much. for sharing, because I know that this was hard for you. Thank you so much, because it's very helpful for me to hear how me reacting in that way impacted the room, you know?
100%. Yeah.
And I went back in there the next day and I apologized.
Good for you.
I apologized, and it was so hard. And I even had a mentor that was like, do not apologize. Like,
Oh,
what
that's
what
terrible.
you said, and it's not a matter of what I said, because what I said
Yes.
was right and true.
Right.
So I was
Yeah.
not apologizing for that. I was apologizing for how
The
I
delivery.
said it, the delivery.
The delivery was off. Oh,
And
fair
and
enough.
and I made sure to clarify that.
Yeah.
And I remember someone saying after that to me one-on-one, they were like, that made a bigger impact on me than anything, because you were willing to admit your fault. And that was one of those embarrassing, just, tail between the leg moments of my leadership journey that I learned. But it was like, I never want to be that type of leader that doesn't admit
Yes.
I'm wrong.
100%. You use the V word, and I don't mean vagina, I mean vulnerability. You might as well say vagina because
Yeah.
it makes people like
Yes.
vulnerability makes people just as uncomfortable. And
Right?
right, I mean, I say that when I deliver workshops, right? And even in corporate environments, people laugh. But I'm like, it's the same sensation to be that vulnerable as
Yes.
a senior leader. And listen, we're senior leaders when we run our small businesses, ladies, but it is absolutely critical. That builds trust. You beautifully illustrated that by showing the vulnerability and showing up in a really true and authentic way and saying, I don't apologize for the message, but I do apologize for the method. Like, that's offside. I was not regulated. I did not self manage well. And as a result, I did not show up as a great leader in that moment. That is absolutely okay. Like your mentor that said never apologize, I think that's categorically wrong. I don't think that that is actually a great way to lead. I think as leaders, we have to be okay to show up and say, I totally goosed that. Like I did not
Yeah.
out there. And what a gift. What a gift you were given in that beautiful, direct, kind, but not nice feedback, right?
Yeah.
That's what we need to hear that, and we need to be able to receive it so that we can take it in, internalize it, and actually do something with it.
Right.
Well, gift. What a beautiful gift. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's not easy to share even on your own podcast, my friend.
Well, the reality is that you are going to make mistakes in your leadership
100%.
journey, in your small business journey, and it's okay, because we've all been there.
Say
So,
that again for the kids in the back. You are totally going to screw it up. 100% of the time, you are going to make mistakes. And you are going to have to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, apologize where required, and get back to work.
yes.
Try not to do the same thing twice. That's the whole idea here in this life,
Yes.
right?
Learn from it, move
Learn
on.
it and move on. Be resilient. That's what we want. But you're going to
Yes.
build incredible trust and incredible credibility if you can just say, that didn't go well. Sorry.
Yes. Oh, and it really is so hard to do. But something you said early on, you were like, when you start practicing it and you do it, then you realize the payoffs of that you are really demonstrating leadership in a beautiful way. And some of those leaders, I was managing leaders, and I wanted to model that well for them to go be good leaders for their people.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
now some of them they're directors, senior directors now. And so I hope that they learn from the good and the bad of what they saw from me. So in your experience, what is investing in a good people strategy for
Yeah.
small business owners? Really, how does that, because this is where a lot of business owners are going to want to get down into the nitty-gritty, right?
Yeah.
Investing in a people strategy, how does that really impact the bottom line of a business? Because how do you kind of correlate that or tie it to the impact that it has for a small business?
Yeah. So, what a people strategy allows you to do is to actually think about the talent that you need to grow and really anticipate in a very meaningful way what that might look like. And you got to include yourself in it, right? Like it's not just about who do I hire, but like, what about me? And so then you don't get caught in these reactive spaces nearly as often. I won't say that you never do because like you can't, nobody's got a crystal ball, right? You can't anticipate the future. But what it allows you to do is just get out in front of it. Have a bit more of a plan and an approach and be a bit more thoughtful about what are the skills and experience, but also who are the right people? What's the right fit to help me accomplish that business plan and ultimately realize the vision, right? Like that's how it all kind of connects together. And so thinking in advance of, okay, I have that particular goal. I have that objective. What are the things that I'm going to need in terms of skill and experience that are going to get that done? And also, what's the culture I'm trying to build? What's the vibe I want to have? What kind of place do I want to create for people to work? Then I can layer in budget because budget is always important. We miss that. We think, oh, shoot, I've got that big fourth quarter goal. I need someone who has experience on that platform, but shoot, I don't know if I have the budget to hire them. If we have a people strategy, we're thinking about all of those pieces well in advance so that we can manage some of those bits and some of the risks a bit more carefully. We're not going to nail it every time, but we can get a whole lot closer. So I'll give you an example. I had a client had a very big goal earlier this year in the first half of 2024. And we had talked people strategy very early in January. And she knew that in one of her lines of business, she needed to extricate herself because she had a different line of business that was going to be executing something later in the year. And so we were really able to think about, okay, we need a general manager to run that piece of the operation. So who do we need? When do we need them? What kind of background do they need to have? And we came up with something actually very unique. We wanted to look at different sectors that had transferable skills. So we knew that recruitment might take a little longer. And what we were able to do is get that person in place, onboard them, get them trained and operating at a high level so she could step out in time to step in to be ready to execute. So that's the idea, is that we just set it up so that you have forward-looking vision around your team. Doesn't have to be complicated, just has to be thoughtful and intentional.
Yes, that is wisdom right there, because how many of us and how many listeners, and hey, and I've been right there where we make strategic business decisions flying by the seat of our pants.
100%.
And if we really are forward thinking and not reactive, then we can have exactly what you just said and tie it more to our bottom line and our budget, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even if we can take out some of the reactivity, we'll never take out all of it because our businesses grow and change, especially as we move into some of those, spaces where we're growing really rapidly. Can't anticipate everything. But at least if we can anticipate some, then we have a better ability to react when we need to, right? We take some of that risk out.
Yes.
Everything is on fire all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just create for yourself, not even just for the culture of people around you, but for yourself, a more enjoyable business that you love.
Yeah.
I mean, this life is too short to be doing something that is just stressing you out all the time.
100%.
Yeah.
It's that flexibility and flow that I think we all want when we get in. Like we start our businesses knowing that that's a deep desire.
Yes.
And then, yes, we end up running around and being a firefighter the whole time. And it's super key that we can extricate ourselves from the tactical work in the business, actually look at the organization more strategically, and really think carefully about the talent, the people, the human capital, right? Those are the individuals that add a great deal of the value in our business. And we don't often plan for that. We'll spend a ton of time on a marketing strategy. We'll spend a ton of time on a capital plan because maybe we need access to funding or credit. But we don't think about the people that are going to do the actual work.
Yeah.
Bonkers.
Yeah. So if I take a step back, and some of my listeners, they may be I've gotten to where I don't like the word solopreneur. I know it's a real word, but I'm so big on community, but
Yeah.
they are doing their business by themselves, right?
100%.
Solopreneur, whatever. And they are at the point where they are realizing I have got to onboard someone, whether it's a virtual assistant or it's someone to help. I coach a lot of product makers, right? A ton of candle makers, because that's
Right.
what my business is, my side hustle that I turned into a full-time thing. And so a lot of product makers that they may need just hands-on help with
Mm-hmm.
production and shipping. And so as think about these type of businesses that they are scaling from kind of that in their home hobby to they want it to be their full-time business, but they need to start, onboarding their very first employee. What are like the few steps that you would recommend to start from the beginning in
Yeah.
creating an effective people strategy?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things that because that's a really tough time when you think about, well, I know I need help, but I don't know who I would hire or even how I would do that. So, first things first, I think really pausing just momentarily, block an hour in your calendar and just think about, okay, this is where the growth is coming from, or this is the business plan where I anticipate growth. Okay, so what are all the things that are going to enable that? Again, are there specific skills? Is there specific experience? Maybe you just need to hire some people part time because you need some flexible help. Like, what does that need to look like in order to make that thing happen? And even what's the next further step?
Right.
Get out in front of it. Spend just a little time thinking that all the way through. And then what are the possible ways that you might want to resource that so that you have a bit more of a clear vision of the background and experience that you're looking for? The next step you want to think about is the who. Who is that person? What do they believe? What do they value? How do they work? Right? So for many of us, we want someone who's going to take ownership. That's a big word I hear. What does ownership mean? You are going to need to define that in your business, because my definition of ownership looks different than Andy's, then looks different from yours. What does ownership mean? What behaviors show that they have ownership? Maybe it's they take control of the project, they ask great questions, they clarify when needed, and they deliver on time. Okay, so define that. Define those pieces that are going to be most important in a person and how they do the work. That's culture. Culture is how we do work together. So if you're not clear, how could they possibly be clear? Then you can start to think about how you want to recruit them. So again, if this is someone that you're looking to hire part-time seasonally, think about where that person who has those skills and works in that way might be located. Maybe it's Indeed, maybe it's Workopolis, maybe it's ZipRecruiter. I don't know. Maybe you want to advertise in a local community newsletter because you think, this is the perfect job for a mom who wants to work between 9:30 and 2:30 so she can go drop off and pick up her kids every day. Where does she hang out? Does she hang out at the church? Does she hang out at the YMCA? That's where you need to go and advertise to find her. Does she hang out on a Facebook group? So be clear about that. And then what are the questions that you need answered in order to know that she's going to work out? Or whatever, right? Whatever your example is. So you're going to develop a little job description, and you need to be clear about the accountabilities and who's going to be successful in the role. So I use phrases like, the right person for this role will do this, or will believe this, or will love doing these things. Put that in your job description so they know. And then make sure you're asking questions that are based on those things. Tell me about a time when. Give me an example of. You took ownership of a project all the way through to delivery. What did that look like? Well, I did this, I did that, I did the other thing. Okay, great. Now you know. Can they do it? For sure. And then you said it. Make sure they're onboarded well. You can't just give someone the job and say, go do it without some instruction. They
Yes.
Is there a job shadow they need to do? Do they need to spend time with you before they can go and do it offline? You need to make sure that you're very clear in your own head and in your calendar, because especially if you're a solopreneur, there's nobody else to learn from. So don't just line them up with access to your Google Drive. Give them space so that you can teach them, just like you would teach your kids. You need to
Yeah.
show them first, then you need to do it together, then they do it and you watch. That's the best pedagogy we can offer someone. Record some loop videos, like as you're just doing your thing, right? Use the tools. Hit Zoom and record yourself. Share your screen. Hey, this is how I do this thing, and this is why this is important, and this is what happens next. And here's how this fits into the grand scheme of the process.
That's so important too, because if they can understand why their work fits into the big picture, that's invaluable. And I love what you just said. You said recording some of those videos. That's great because listen, this is probably not going to be your last time that you
No.
onboard someone. And guess what? Now you have a whole library of repeatable operating
Process.
procedures or whatever you want to call them that you can share with the next person that you onboard. So,
Yes. And
yeah.
you just you iterate them, you re-record them. Yes, maybe you want to create the SOPs at some point, but especially inside of an organization that's between 0 and 5 employees, having something that is what I would call quick and dirty. Don't spend a ton of time systematizing everything. That's not really going to add a great deal of value because you're still growing. Like the process is going to shift probably inside of the next 12 months. So do it quick, make it effective, make it clear. If you are a solopreneur and you have been doing all the work, don't assume that someone knows how to do it the way you do it. They don't. They can't get inside your brain. I see this as one of the biggest problems. Well, I hired 3 people and they never worked out. Why? Well, they just never did what I wanted them to do. Did you tell them what you wanted them to do? Oh, sure. Yeah. I showed them in the first hour on the first Monday that they started, but they never delivered. No, that's not how people learn. You're not
Right.
setting them up for success.
Yeah. And
Starts
then
with
we wonder why they never liked working for us, because they're
nobody.
confused.
Well, exactly. Nobody comes with a crystal ball. They can't read your mind. I just was talking with someone the week before last about this. Well, they came with great skills, but they're not performing well. Okay, so what's happening? Well, they don't do this thing and they don't and I was like, "Okay, so do you have any kind of explanation or SOP?" Well, no. Oh, so where do they go if they have to ask questions? Well, they come to me, but I really don't have time in my calendar for that. So there's no place for them to ask questions and they're really screwing it up. Okay, well, you know what? That's actually not their fault. They're doing the best they can with almost no information or guidance. Like, come on. We're
Yeah.
not in superheroes. This isn't Marvel, right?
Yes, that happens all the time. And I think especially as business owners, we think we're hiring because we want to get things off of our plate. But
Yes.
listen, if you want to get things off your plate, sometimes you have to add a few more things to your plate to help train them and bring them up to speed. And so it's a healthy reminder for myself as well. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, totally.
What tools, or I know that you have an amazing playbook. I've already downloaded it. So I'm going to put a
Well,
plug for your playbook here and it will be in the show notes. But maybe talk a little bit about your people strategy playbook that my listeners will have access to in
yeah.
the show notes and why they should download that.
Yeah. So I designed the people strategy playbook, particularly for female founders that are really approaching their very first people strategy for their small business, right? So they're experiencing growth. They recognize that the talent is really key in accelerating that growth. And they want to take that first step in planning a people strategy. And so, what it is a step by step process. I use the same process inside of my people strategy accelerator program. And I've just broken it down and made it as simple as possible to step you through what are the chunks? What are the pieces you need to think about? What are the questions that are going to get your thought process going so that you can really start to examine all of the different elements of a successful people strategy? keeps it really straightforward, doesn't have to be complicated or complex, but does give you those prompts to think more strategically.
Yes. And it is amazing, if I do say so myself. So thank you
Well,
for sharing.
I'm
with
so
the audience.
grateful. I'm so grateful. The other thing that I will send you, because I know that that space of, my very first recruitment is tough. I have a recruitment workbook that will help step people through that process. So I will send you that link. You can share that as well,
Awesome.
just so that everyone can understand what are the steps in a great recruitment and onboarding, because recruitment and onboarding belong together. And if you can do that process right from the very beginning, from your first hire, you'll be far more successful and more confident. You'll have less turnover. And in the end, it won't cost you as much money and time.
Yes. Such wisdom.
Thank
Any
you.
last parting words for my listeners or anything
Yeah.
else that you want to share?
I think, maybe I can sum it up by saying it starts with you as the business owner and the leader. You may not really think of yourself as a leader right now, but you need to. And you need to start now whether you're starting your business, you're growing your business, or you're accelerating your business. You need to think about who you are as a leader and how you're showing up when you lead clients, when you lead vendors, when you lead team, when you lead yourself. And if you could start there, who am I as a leader? Why is that important? What makes it authentic for me? And you can start to embrace that in a meaningful way. That will serve you well as your business grows and changes and shifts, and it will grow with you. Because you're right. You said it. It's always a journey. So if you're going to spend time on anything, spend time thinking about your own leadership and what that's going to look like.
Yes. Serve you well in business and in life as well.
100%. Yeah.
So thank you for those resources. We'll put those in the show notes. And then where can my listeners find you online as well?
So I'm on Instagram and my handle is at High Volt Leadership. And I love to share all sorts of different stuff. So please, come and connect. And if you have any questions, send me a DM. I also spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So you can find me there as Lindsay White. Again, love to connect, love to see people online. And of course, on the website, which is highvoltageleadership.ca.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsay. This has been amazing. And I love learning from other experts in the industry. And so I just love connecting with you. It's been a
Oh,
joy.
yeah. We always have the most fantastic conversations.
Yes, we do. I could just talk all day long and learn so much. And yes, such a joy.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the She Sells Differently podcast. And we will be back next Wednesday for another episode. And until then, I am cheering you on. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of She Sells Differently. Friends, it would be a huge blessing to me if you would take 2 seconds to rate and subscribe to my podcast. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Until then, I'm cheering you on in your entrepreneurial journey. See you next time.